Hey everyone, welcome back to JarDev. Today I'm doing something a little bit different today. I'm doing this video at the request of Sean Heatherly, who got to request this because he backs at the top tier of my Patreon campaign, which you can find at patreon.com/JarDev. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago he sent me an article on Twitter about this guy who had posted on Reddit about an incredibly in-depth D&D campaign that he was putting together himself, based entirely on Dark Souls, which is totally down my alley. So there's all kinds of stuff to look into for this. Basically, I'm just going to kind of look at it, see how it fits in with the lore. I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty lore friendly. I'm pretty sure he's done his research here. So this was all posted on Reddit by SnicklefritzSkad. And then there's been a few articles, I think. I saw a Kotaku one. But this is where it started. It started on r/D&D with just a picture, which was the setting for his universe of his Dark Souls campaign of Lictoros. So it looks like this is... Damn it, we can't expand it. This is like a... It's a big, I would guess, stone sculpture of probably some kind of giant, with a castle on its head, and he does confirm later on down that this whole thing is an area that you can explore. You've got the path going up to it, so you can head inside. Already we can see it's sort of like sand dunes. It looks very much like it's from the end of the Ringed City. What was it, like Kiln of the First Flame kind of area, and I think he does confirm that a bit later down. So here we go. So here's the first little lore bit. Well over a million years into the future from Dark Souls 3, which doesn't include the final boss of the second DLC, which takes place roughly around the same time period. So this is... Because I guess the fight with Gale is technically at the end of time and the end of the world, which is kind of crazy, because obviously you team up with Gale in... at the end of Ashes of Ariandel to fight Sister Frieda and Allfather Ariandel, and also to fight the demon princes at the beginning of Ringed City. And so he's still helping you at that point. He's still like, you know, he's your size. And then when you go forward, I don't know if it's a million years, it's quite a while. You go to the end of time, basically. And that's when you fight him in the Kiln of the First Flame area. So it looks like this is kind of like an alternate telling. It doesn't include the Gale, but it takes place at the same time period. So I think like this is supposed to be in place of Gale. So basically everything else happens in Dark Souls except for Gale. So the entire world was conquered by a god emperor known as the Lictor, who harnessed the power of soapstones to travel to other worlds and conquer them as well. That's interesting, because soapstones obviously let you... Well, some of them do in fact let you invade other worlds. But yeah, you like even the white sign soapstone, you place it down and you do travel to somebody else's world. It's the same world that you've been in, but it's still somebody else's. After a millennia of soaking up power and covering the lands with a continent-sized city, which could be this one right here, he linked the flame which he claimed would burn forever, keeping away the abyss for eternity and staving off the undead curse. The people built a monument to him at the center of their world and celebrated. So this must be the monument to him, which they ended up building a city on top of. I guess like this used to be their world and then it became all ashy and kilny. But the flame wasn't meant to burn so long without a cycle of darkness to cleanse it. Ash began to fall from the sky, and with it came the curse of the dark sign, returned to bring chosen undead to save the world as they have done so many times. Not only will they have to fight against the remains of a world forced to live long past its death to usher in darkness, but against another more sinister power, the predator of the deep seas, the scourge of the outer worlds, the Visitor. Okay, so there's actually a lot going on in here. Obviously, yeah. End of Dark Souls 1, if you link the fire. Beginning of Dark Souls 3, it's already dying. Or end of Dark Souls 1, you link the fire, go right into New Game Plus, fire's pretty much dead already. So that's just the cycle of Dark Souls, is fire's dying, someone can link the fire to keep it going, or someone can get rid of it completely for the Age of Darkness, which is the Age of Man, which I always used to think the Age of Fire was like the good ending. And then the more I looked into the lore, the more I thought the Age of Dark was the better ending. But it really is just open to interpretation, which is quite nice. So when he linked the flame, he thought it would burn forever and keep away the abyss and basically get rid of the undead curse. But it just came back, apparently. So I guess that's where like the hero of the campaign would be. You would be a chosen undead, found in some asylum, perhaps. It sounds like a pretty dark world. Probably wouldn't make it for a good video game if it's all killing the first flamey. If everywhere you're walking it's just like grey sand dunes everywhere. But I think it'd be good for a D&D campaign. And then obviously the last bit here. Against another more sinister power, the predator of the deep seas, the scourge of the outer worlds, the visitor. So the deep seas part is very interesting because Aldrich, what's he, Aldrich Saint of the Deep or whatever? Here we go, Aldrich Devourer of the Gods, also called Aldrich Saint of the Deep. So Aldrich is pretty much where you find the most about the Age of the Deep Sea, which is super Bloodborne-y, and it's kind of like the biggest tie to Bloodborne in Dark Souls 3, apart from all the stuff they copy and pasted from Bloodborne. But there's a few references to the deep in Dark Souls 3, nothing before that, as far as I know. Could be wrong, but I don't think there was. And there's not too much. It talks about it a bit with the clerics as well. Old Popey boy. But mostly Aldrich. Especially if you see him in the opening cinematic when he's kind of pouring out of that coffin. It's like a big black slug. He looks very watery and deep. So that makes him sound like a big ancient sea monster. Now we've also got the Scourge of the Outer Worlds. And also the Visitor. Those kind of tie together. And those will just sound extremely Lovecrafty. I'm pretty sure in the lore Cthulhu, like all of them come from, all the old gods in Lovecraft come from beyond the stars. They come from the outer worlds and then arrive or visit our worlds. So I imagine that's probably what he's going for here with the Visitor. He started out far out in space and then came here and went into the water somewhere and was the predator of the deep seas. So I'm not really sure how the Visitor would work with the Lictor. I was hoping to get a little bit more from the definition, but not too much. It's from ancient Rome. There's an officer attending the consul or other magistrate bearing the fishes and executing sentences on offenders. So kind of like a judge / executioner sort of thing. So I'm not sure how they'd do against each other, the Lictor and the Visitor. But like this whole thing with the Visitor is so, like it fits in really well, especially with the whole bit about the Age of the Deep that Aldrich talks about. And that's just never really done much more with in Dark Souls 3. There's loads of stuff about the Deep, or what would probably be considered the Deep in Bloodborne, but not too much in Dark Souls 3, so I think this fits in very well. And as for like how lore friendly the Lictor is, it does fit quite well. Like a conquering warrior is a theme that's been in Dark Souls before, like Dark Souls 2. King Vendrick obviously traveled to the land of the giants and conquered them and stole a treasure from them, which is what caused the giants to invade Drang Lake to come and try and get the treasure back, and that's why you see a bunch of giants everywhere. But Vendrick basically killed shitloads of giants just to get whatever Nashandra told him to go get. Still don't really know what it is. I don't think anybody knows what he went to get. So yeah, the Lictor fits quite well in with previous Dark Souls lore. Oh, so further on down, he actually says that the picture up above, the big statue thing, is all the levels of the game except for 2. So at the bottom is a level similar to the Undead Burg, the Firelink Shrine's there, and then the rest, except for some underground ones, take place inside the statue. Wow. So his head is sort of the equivalent of Anor Londo. I mean, it could indeed be Anor Londo, who knows? But that's crazy. So you've got, let's go back up. So we've got this here, probably like just below the entrance would be the Undead Burg kind of area, and then before that would be Firelink Shrine somewhere. And then, wow, so you have to go all the way up there. And like if this is about the scale of Anor Londo, then yeah, this is like a million Sense Fortresses up there. It also sounds like there's sort of tons of different dungeons in each area, kind of basically putting most of Dark Souls in there. He says there's some kind of area in his foot, there's a horrible poisony Blight Town area in the sword, something in the hilt, a snowy one, Ariandel, or Ariamis in the arm, an abyss-filled one in the chest, and then again he says it's Anor Londo at the top. So it could very well be actually Anor Londo up at the top. Oh, there you go. There's the confirmation the head is actually Anor Londo. In true Dark Souls fashion, there'll be no explanation why it still exists or why it's on top of a giant statue. That is absolutely fair. That is exactly what they did in Dark Souls 3. Okay, so that's a lot of the lore stuff, so I didn't want to go too much into this one. This is on r/D&D Behind the Screen, where SnicklefritzSkad also posted a huge breakdown of how everything works. Basically just all the rules about his D&D campaign. So I don't want to go too much into the mechanics, because I'd rather talk about the lore, but he does say that the gold and XP of D&D or Pathfinder or whatever you play are both combined into souls, which is exactly how it works in Dark Souls. Oh, interesting. He says when one player dies, then the whole party has to reset at the bonfire. That is really cool, actually. And obviously just the one person that died drops all their souls, everybody else will still have those. And then he has to retrieve them all before resetting again. Wow. Okay, so also each time they die, they get a little bit of hollowing, sort of like Dark Souls. And if they reach 100 hollowing, they will go hollow and become a hostile NPC, I guess, controlled by the DM at the place of death. That's crazy. Unless the player wants to play as the hostile, as long as they don't pull punches. If the hollow player kills another player, they revert to 50 hollowing, and the killed player gains 50 hollowing. So I guess if you have, like, nice friends, they could, like, kind of sacrifice themselves to take half your hollowing, and so you could come back to the party. Well, that is pretty much the only way around it. If the players kill the hollow player, then it dies forever, which makes the player roll a new character. Okay. Nice to say instant transportation from bonfire to bonfire will be available later once retrieving the Lord Vessel. Who knows if that's still going to be at the top of Anor Londo? That's where it was in Dark Souls 1. I would imagine probably not, because that is theoretically the end of the game, except for a fight probably with the Lictor or the Visitor. Oh man, here's a great bit. Every single item will have an accompanying item description that will give lore in the world and information on the item for its use. Just like Dark Souls. Players that learn all the lore will become the DM's favorite and will not only get inspiration for making lore speculation, but also vital information on enemy boss weaknesses and hidden loot. That's so great. That's sort of how it works in Dark Souls. Apart from becoming the game's favorite, the game still hates you no matter what. But, you know, if your first time at Yorm the Giant or whatever, you run around, you're not damaging him, you pick up the sword, it says probably something interesting about slaying giants. Well, I was going to check the item description for Stormcaller, but my internet decided just to go down in the middle of recording this video, so that's nice. But anyway, it does make sense. I'm pretty sure reading things like Stormcaller's item description would help you beat Yorm more easily. Okay, so it looks like all that's left to do is check out all these pictures down at the bottom. So I think they're all the same. So we've got a map layout here of part of it. So it looks like he's really planned this out. It's crazy. So yeah, they all connect to different parts. I'm not sure quite what part this is. But there are just a ton of different maps. Oh, it looks like a boss there. The Foreman, possibly? Was there a boss in here? Torturous Severian, probably. The Foreman. It's sounding a little like the second area in Demon Souls, Stonefang Tunnel. Kind of looks a little bit like it too. Do they have the bonfires here? You have to go pretty big on these, but those might just be furnaces, I'm not sure. There's the Firelink Shrine. Ooh. So that looks... Whew. I think it was like an unused version of Firelink Shrine. There's a channel on YouTube called SanadSK, who I've recently subscribed to, who does a bunch of Soulsborne cut content videos. And one of the videos he did was on the original story of Dark Souls 2, which was actually changed before Dark Souls 2 came out. And in that video he used a bunch of like homemade cinematics that he'd like put together himself. And in it, I'll put a link in the description, but the Firelink Shrine in that video looks a lot like this one here, actually. It's very interesting. It looks like this leads to the Sword of the Lictor, and this also looks quite like something from Stonefang Tunnel in Demon Souls, interestingly enough. That's the Basilica of Cinder. My god. Crow carrying a something knight? Firing crossbows at players. Wow, that sounds terrifying. Oh boy, this looks pretty difficult too. Wonder if that's where the lictor would be. It's the Bone Beetle boss around here. Yeah, just from looking, like, the lore sounds very Dark Souls 3 and a little bit Bloodborne-y, with a little bit of Dark Souls 2 and Analondo, I guess. But the maps and like the monsters, the bosses, sounds very Demon Souls-y. It all looks really, really Stonefang Tunnel-y. It's very interesting. Oh god, the Limb Urchin. Oh, so you fight this thing in a giant pool of, like, a lake of blood. That's pretty dope. Anyway, so that was just a quick video looking at the homebrew Dark Souls D&D campaign created by SnicklefritzSkad. It's really, really interesting. I do wish there was, like, even more stuff I could look at. I'd love it if he made like a full book one day, like a full DM book. That would be crazy. But yeah, this was really, really cool. So thanks, Sean, for asking me to take a look at this. I wouldn't have gone in or as in depth as I did if I hadn't had to do this video, I think. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!